Hi, and welcome to the Newbery Chronicles. This is a podcast where two people read through every Newbery Medal winning book, and then we talk about it. I'm Michael.
And I'm Rebecca.
And this time we are going to be talking about Flora and Ulysses, the illuminated adventures by Kate DiCamillo. So this was the 2014 Newbery Medal winner. But first, let's talk about quickly what we've been reading recently. Rebecca, tell us.
Well, right now I'm trying to figure out my Mac.
Rebecca just got a new computer because she got a new job.
Yes, which is why I guess we should explain why it's taken us so long to record this episode. It's because there's been some life changes, guys, and they're all very good, but they've taken up a lot of time. So I have since navigated my list. I have a long list of things that I've read. And all of these except one have been ones that I've read, listened to for audiobooks. So I'm not going to give you a synopsis of all of them. I'm just going to kind of go through the list.
Just to drive
for the sake of time. And then if you want to email me about ones you have questions about, you can let me know.
I'll email you.
I'm bad at drive-by, so I might say a few things about some of these books.
So you're going to be like those people who drive by and then stop in the middle of the street to talk to their friends who are also driving by.
That's me. So I read Native Son by Richard Wright, which was my first and only Richard Wright that I've read, and it was very sad. And I was glad that I went into this book without knowing anything about it, really. But then I have this habit of, when I'm listening to audiobooks, forgetting who characters are. And so I try to look up like a character list on the internet, but then I always run into spoilers. So I'm kind of mad that I spoiled a part of this book that's pretty much known to everyone else as I was reading it. But I thought that book was very well done and also very sad. I read Prodigal Summer by Barbara Kingsolver, which was just fine. It was just fine. And I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zavine, which was phenomenal. I want to talk to everybody about this book, which everybody has been reading this book since 2022 when it came out, because it was on a really, really long wait list on Libby. And even me that doesn't care anything about video games really enjoyed this book, and the whole premise is around video games. It was very good. I read My Antonia and O Pioneers by Willa Cather, and I learned that I am not a fan of Willa Cather.
Me neither.
And I read Mad Honey by Jodi Picoult and Jennifer Finney Boylan. And that book was really great. And your Aunt Kathy Cooper suggested it to me. So Thank you, Aunt Kathy Cooper. That book was very good. I read Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown, and I wished that I would have read it physically. I think that's one that I'd like to own because it's hard to listen to on audiobook, but she has a lot of wisdom. And I think it's helpful to just go back and explore things. Like many books about mental health and emotional well-being, those are good ones to have to refer back to as necessary. I read Counting the Cost by Jill Duggar, and I will admit that this was one that I read as an ebook when I was supposed to be reading Flora and Ulysses and Suttree, because I was so excited when it finally showed up that it was available. And that I think she does a really good job of telling her story. And I think she does a really good job of telling her, version of a story that she never consented to tell in the first place, So anyway, I would love to talk about that book with anybody, because Michael's probably, I know that Michael's tired of hearing about the Duggars from me, but that book was really good. I was really proud of her. And then, just today, I finished Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil by John Brent. I don't know if that's how you say his name. And this book has been out since the 90s. And when I tell you that I was on a several-week wait list for this book, I'm not joking. And 8 people were waiting for it when I finished it because it is that good. It is that good. And people are still reading it. And I don't know if there's some type of resurgence for it right now or if it's still so popular, but I want to watch the movie. But that is my list. Also, I've read a ton of Magic Treehouse books with my son, but I didn't write those down.
That's all right. They're interchangeable.
Because he's gotten really into those. And that's been really fun to read chapter books with him and see him get excited and really pay attention to that. So That's what I've read. What about you, Michael?
I have not read nearly so many things. I read, let's see, I don't remember what I talked about last time because it's been so long. But I read Naked Lunch by William S. Burroughs, which was wild. I've read, what else have I read? I've read...
You've read more of Suttree than I
I
have.
have continued to read Cormac McCarthy's Suttree, and I don't know if we talked about that on the last podcast or not, but we are currently in a kind of loosely knit book club reading through Suttree, and so I'm about halfway through right now, enjoying it. It's funny, which is something I wasn't expecting of a Cormac McCarthy novel. And then right now, I am reading it's called Endless Endless. It's a book a friend loaned to me, which it's like basically an oral history of the Elephant Six Collective, which is like a musical kind of circle of like a circle of musicians who put out a lot of music that, like, if you're into indie rock, is pretty significant. So like Neutral Milk Hotel or Of Montreal or Olivia Tremor Control. So like that kind of like 90s indie rock, like they're really important to that. And so I didn't know a lot about those musicians outside of just their music. So it's been interesting to hear about it. Yeah, I mean that's it, I guess. Except for Flora and Ulysses, I have not read nearly as much as you have, unless I'm forgetting something.
That's just because I listen to audiobooks during the day.
That's true. It would be difficult for me to listen to audiobooks while I'm teaching. So yeah, let's get into Flora and Ulysses. We do not really have to introduce Kate DiCamillo, both because she's a famous author and needs no introduction, but also because we already did a book by Kate DiCamillo, The Tale of Despero.
And that was episode 11.
Episode 11. She is the first of several authors that we will cover. Well, I guess this is the first author who we've read a second book by in this series, and there will be several others who will also have that distinction by the time that we're done. So rather than recap what we said the last episode, we'll just direct you to episode 11, Tale of Despero. I read this book several weeks ago, and Rebecca literally just finished this book, so I'm going to defer to Rebecca to summarize the plot, because I have reviewed the plot to refresh my memory. However, I think it would be fresher in Rebecca's memory.
All right. Well, I'm also referring to Wikipedia to refresh my own memory about the plot of this book. But
that's true. Parts of this book you read weeks ago.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about that. But this book is set in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Flora Bell Buckman is the main character, and the book is told from her perspective, and she is a self-proclaimed...
Well, somewhat from her perspective.
Mostly from her perspective. There are other perspectives as well. She's a self-proclaimed cynic. She loves reading comic books, and her parents have recently been divorced. She really bonded with her dad over reading comic books. That was something that they did together. And now that he's like a sad bachelor, she feels very disconnected from him. And
she's also living with her mother.
She's living with her mom, yeah. But even when she's with her dad, like, it feels they just don't have that same connection anymore, or that was my understanding. But anyway, then one day, at the beginning of the book, a neighbor surprises his wife with a fancy vacuum. I think it's like the Ulysses 2000 or something like that. And
it's got headlights.
Really super duper vacuum cleaner, and he's really excited about this gift for his wife, and his wife is like, dude, it's a vacuum cleaner. But anyway, this vacuum cleaner has a mind of its own. It goes into the yard and basically drags the woman behind. The woman's name is Tootie. It drags her behind, and it sucks up this squirrel. And we think that the squirrel is dead, but it turns out that this being sucked up by the vacuum cleaner gives him these superpowers. He can understand humans, and he can type, he can fly, he has other powers, like he is really strong. Anyway, he's a superhero. And Flora names him Ulysses after the vacuum cleaner. And she says to Ulysses that he must use his newfound powers to right wrongs, fight injustice, or something. And so Ulysses decides that he's going to write on Flora's mother's typewriter. Flora's mother is a novelist, and she has this lamp named Marianne that is like a shepherdess.
Yeah, I think so.
It's really tacky. Flora hates it. Her mom loves it. And anyway, that Marianne will come back in the story later. Anyway, Flora's mother discovers this squirrel and she hates him. She's very disturbed by him. She thinks he has rabies. So Flora talks to her mom about her desire to. She also asks Flora's dad to kill this squirrel. He does not end up killing the squirrel because the squirrel actually saves him from this really scary cat that lives in his building. And Flora and her dad reconnect over this idea of like this squirrel having these superpowers like these heroes in their comic books. So anyway, Flora gets really mad at her mom that she would even want this squirrel killed. They get into a shouting match. Her mom says some really hurtful things, and Flora just feels really lonely, feels like her mother doesn't really love her. She decides to go live with her dad. That doesn't end up happening, but her mother devises this plot to have Ulysses type a fake letter.
Have we said that the squirrel is named Ulysses?
Yes.
Okay.
Because she named it after the vacuum cleaner.
Right.
I said that.
Okay, sorry.
Anyway.
There's a lot of details in this book.
Yes. So anyway, she has this squirrel type a fake letter from himself saying that, I don't even remember what it
It's
said.
basically like, I've gone to back to live in the wild.
Right.
Like, I can't live with y'all. And
Right. And she kidnaps him. Flora catches wind of this and then takes Marianne basically to like negotiate an exchange. And there's this character, I should talk about William Spiver. There's this little guy that's about Flora's age named William Spiver. He's this very like quirky character. He's actually the nephew of Tootie, the woman that has the vacuum cleaner. He comes to live with her. We come to find out that he comes to live with her because his mother is dating this guy that he really doesn't like. He takes revenge on this guy by like pushing his truck into a pond, and his mom then sends him away. So he's dealing with the hurt of being left from his mother, but then joins Flora in this mission of like helping Ulysses find his power and how Ulysses' powers can help them all heal.
he's also gone blind.
Yes, he's gone temporarily blind. Nobody believes him. They think that he's just exaggerating. I didn't believe him. And I felt bad at the end when he was like, no, you he says this beautiful thing of like, he tells his aunt, he's like, you're not in my body. You don't know. I cannot see. Anyway, I felt very humbled by that line of like, it just reminded me of what a grown-up I am when I read books now, you know? Like
You don't believe the children.
You read them from the perspective of like an adult, which is really boring and limited. I don't know. I felt bad. But anyway, where am I?
They're going to go get Ulysses, who has been kidnapped by Flora's mom.
So through a series of events, like Ulysses saves himself from the mother's plot to kidnap him and kill him. And Flora's mom realizes that Flora has left the house, that she's gone. And she finds her, but as she's calling for her, Flora thinks that what she really wants is the lamp, Marianne. And then she discovers all along that her mother loves her, and that's who she really came for. So that's kind of a plot synopsis. Anything that I left out that you think I should?
I mean, there's a lot of little incident that gets left out. There's that neighbor of the dad who is from some other country that's made up, I think. Mm-hmm. And she's like this kind of whimsical character who takes in different characters at different times to counsel them and just be silly. Let's see.
When she kind of facilitates a lot of these healing conversations or like self-discovery moments.
there's also the format of the book, which is worth pointing out. It's called an illuminated adventure, and what that means is it's illustrated, and there are parts that are illustrated kind of conventionally, where you have just illustrations next to the text, and then there are other passages that are actually in comic book form. So you'll be reading along, and then one chapter will be a comic book version of the story progressing. So that's why it's called an illuminated adventure. It's illustrated with both traditional illustrations as well as comic books.
Yeah. What did you like about this book, Michael?
I liked a lot of things about it, just the little details. I think that the book does a good job of being kind of silly and whimsical, while also having characters who are going through some sort of pain or existential crisis at the same time. And the book never really, sometimes books that are silly will take this hard left turn into sentiment, where it has to we got to stop being silly now so that we can have all the characters share their feelings. And the book never really does that. The book kind of stays in this strange, heightened, goofy tone the whole time, while also doing a really good job of I think showing how the characters feel. Something that I compared it to before we started, and something that I know that Rebecca is not a fan of, is the work of filmmaker Wes Anderson, which this reminded me of, because a lot of his films have this kind of highly artificial, very almost closed off tone that engages in kind of silly or absurd stuff, but in doing so reveals these characters' inner lives and the kind of pain that they're going through. And this isn't as dark or involved as a lot of Wes Anderson stuff, but it did remind me of that, where the surface of it is very affected and kind of strange and has a lot of distancing effects to it. And then behind that is some character turmoil, interiorly, that a lot of the characters are using this whimsy as a coping mechanism. So Flora has her comic books, and the way that there's an element of this book that could be read as this entire framework is Flora trying to cope with the kind of splitting of her family now that her family is divorced, and she's doing it through the medium of comic books. And so all of this she's understanding through that sort of narrative framework, because it's her that convinces the squirrel that he is a superhero, for example. And he doesn't really seem to have that many powers. He can jump and
he can fly,
right, and fly, but he doesn't fly that much. And I don't know, she is the one kind of imposing this superhero framework on them, and it's a way for her to understand, because for a long portion of the book, the mom is the villain, and so it's kind of her working out the just the complicated feeling she has about her parents now that they've separated, and how living with her mother has kind of made her and her mother at odds. And so she's framing it as this kind of binary superhero villain narrative. And then you also have someone like William Spiver, who is also dealing with his own stuff, and he doesn't have narratives, but he does have this kind of smarter, smarty pants kind of demeanor to him that you can kind of tell is he's being precocious, because he's trying to put up defenses against the feelings. He doesn't want vulnerability, because that's difficult. Anyway, I liked that element of it, the way that those two things mixed in a way that I thought worked pretty well. What did you like about it?
I think the premise is cute. We'll get into what I dislike later, but it's not really a critique with the book. It's really a critique of me. But anyway, I think the premise is cute. It's a funny idea. I really love the relationship between Flora and her dad, and just their shared love of comics and how that comes out throughout the book. And I don't know, I just think that's sweet. It's something that Flora's mom is really concerned about, that she just wants to stay in her room all day and read comics. And so they have this divide because she doesn't really understand it. But Flora feels this divide because, like, she's not with her dad who understands. So when they kind of, like, understand each other through this shared love of comics, it's like any art that you share with somebody else. Like, the joy is multiplied when you share it with somebody. And I think we see that happen with them. And, like, he gets just so excited about this squirrel and the adventures of it all. So I think that whole relationship is really sweet.
It is nice sharing stories with someone you love.
Yeah, like you and I are doing right now. But
Yes,
anyway.
that very thing.
I think all the emotional scenes hit just right, just like Kate DiCamillo does over and over again. She's just really good at that. Like, when they have this fight, Flora and her mom, like what her mom said, Flora says, I'm going to go live with my dad. I think her mom says something like, well, great, that would make my life so much easier. And just like hearing that, like putting yourself in that position and hearing that, like it's crushing. It's so crushing. And she doesn't do it with a lot of like a flair or anything. It's just there, and you see kind of the disastrous effects of that kind of happen. I think that scene is done really well. I also think her mom's, like, I feel for this mom. Like, she is the arch nemesis, throughout the book. But, like, that, and Flora calls her that. I'm not saying that. But anyway, you see her desperate attempt to foster this neurotypical child because she wants her to fit in. She wants her to have friends. She wants her to be normal.
Neurodivergent.
No, she wants a neurotypical child, and
see.
she doesn't have one. And I think she's trying to foster an environment where she does. But what's so ironic about that is she's super quirky herself, and I kind of feel like we see her trying to remake her own childhood through her daughter because she wants it to be easier for her. That's not in there, like, fully.
Yeah, I don't think we ever learned about her childhood, do we?
But I just like her obsession with this weird lamp. Like,
Yeah.
That doesn't have to mean as many things as I'm making it mean. But, like, you see throughout the book that people look at her and are like, it's something, I just don't quite understand everything that's going on here. And I see her trying desperately to make a different life for Flora. And so I think just as a parent, like, you have empathy for that, even if you don't agree with the decisions that she makes or, like, how she goes about that. I think the scene where Flora is just really seeking her dad when she feels lonely is sweet. She has to think for a minute, like, I'm feeling lonely. I want home. What does that look like? It's with my dad. And I think William Spiver is mostly just, like, a super quirky, but when we hear him talk about that scene between his mom and the boyfriend, honestly, it reminded me of a lot of kids that I've worked with that I've seen their caregivers pick their significant others over them, and having to watch them, like, come to the realization of what that means. It's really hard, and there's not a good way to reconcile that, and Kate DiCamillo doesn't try to, and so I appreciate her honesty about that. And then, I think the ending is sweet. How in the end, Flora realizes her mom really does love her, and her mom realizes that who Flora is right now is the most important thing to me, and that's what I'm going to fight for. So that's what I liked.
All right. I'm going to say what I didn't like, and then I'll let you say what you didn't like.
Okay. Isn't that what we always do?
I meant that I wanted to go first.
Well, we switch back and forth.
Okay, so I think it's less about things I didn't like in this book and just things that I don't think worked as well as maybe I would have wanted them to. I guess, like, part of it is the only other Kate DiCamillo book I've read is Tale of Despero, and that is a consistently surprising book where you have this unfolding plot and things are always happening in ways that make, like, each successive chapter makes the book feel bigger. And so I guess that's kind of what I'm comparing this to. And this book is kind of like Despero in the sense of there's an animal sidekick, and there is this kind of unfolding plot that has, like, kind of silly elements. It's got kind of a genre, framing of it. Like Despero had like the fairy tale framework, and this has the superhero framework. But I think that as the book goes on, some of what happens ends up being merely just like it's very like this book is very full of incident, but I'm not. It a lot of times feels like it's spinning its wheels, not because what's happening is bad, but then when you reflect back over, like, okay, what all happened here? Like, there's all sorts of kind of kooky stuff that happens that's like, oh wow, what's going to happen now in the moment? But then when you reflect over it, I don't know how much it adds. For example, I know that she's mainly there to allow William Spiver to be there, but Tootie, the neighbor, I never really felt what was I supposed to do with her. Like, she's silly and kind of funny, and she's always just kind of like this flighty, like, airheaded person who's, willing to go along with what the kids want to do and helps them at certain points. Like, I get her function in the narrative, but, like, I wonder, we spend a lot of time with her at times, and I wonder how much that time was worth in the context of the book. Like, I guess what I'm saying is this book feels longer than it needs to be, and I feel like that there's ways in which it could be more efficient or trimmed down, just because it's so busy all the time. You have all these little quirky little anecdotes and little cul-de-sacs that the narrative takes, and I don't dislike anything that's in here, but as a whole, I kind of wish it were less shaggy. It just doesn't feel as tightly constructed as Despero. Overall, I liked it, but by the end, I was kind of ready to be done with it, and a little bit before it ended. I think I just got kind of maybe a bit fatigued by how busy it ends up being. Without the feeling of a constant like forward momentum. I don't know. What do you feel?
Yeah, I feel those things too. I will, to give the book credit, I feel like I've been an irresponsible reader because I have not prioritized this book, and so I started it a long time ago, and I've just kind of read it really slowly. So I don't feel like I've devoured it in the same way that I have other books where I can like speak about it better. This is not, as you kind of alluded to with the Wes Anderson sort of thing, I can appreciate this, but it's not like my go-to book. Like, I love Kate DiCamillo, but I don't love this style of like story book. It's just very, very quirky, and it's supposed to be, and I appreciate it for what it is, but like, I wanted it to be funnier than it was, and I felt like the characters weren't super dynamic. They're mostly just quirky. Like, you do see them have, like, moments of vulnerability and stuff, but, like, that's not really till the very end, I felt like.
I think it depends on the character. Someone like Flora is always, like, dealing with the kind of intense, like, emotional stuff with her parents being separated. Yeah. But then, like, someone like William Spiver, you don't really
He's just kind of there for like comedic effort.
Relief.
Yes, until the very end. But even then, like, I'm glad we know his story. I don't know. The other thing about it, and this is like I feel like a limit of mine, a bias of mine. I like animated movies. I really do. I don't love cartoons though, like shows, cartoon shows. I don't know if this makes any sense, because it doesn't to Michael, but I say that and then I can get really into some. Anyway, when I read books, like, I picture the characters as like real people, and that helps me like connect with them. For some reason, I think it was because this book was so silly. Silly sounds reductive, but it is
trying to be like whimsical, yes, and off the cuff and a little bit like goofy in ways that it's like a tone thing where the tone is meant to be light, yeah, and almost like half joking all the time, but not in a sarcastic way, just in a way that like almost like a Dr. Seuss story or something
Yes.
like that, where
Yeah.
the tone is really bubbly and is constantly introducing like strange little ideas and weird little occurrences.
Right. So I think because of that tone combined with the illustrations that are throughout the book, I just couldn't shake in my memory, like it was a cartoon the whole time I was reading it, and I just felt like because of that I couldn't fully connect with the characters because of my own bias about silly cartoons. Is that fair? Like, so these are not critiques of the book. These are more critiques of me.
I think that makes sense.
That's all that I have.
I think it's interesting. We were looking this up beforehand, but
Yes.
Disney adapted this into a movie for Disney Plus a couple of years ago, and I was fully expecting it to be animated, but it's not. It's live action.
It should be. I mean, it's made to be an animated
thing,
but they made it
you
live
could
action.
imagine, I mean, this is getting into the weeds, but I could imagine Leica or someone like that, like an animation studio, doing a good job with this. Disney probably, I don't know, I've not seen the movie, but I can imagine the kind of milquetoast decom that this became when Disney adapted it.
I have no interest in seeing it, and it's not because I hated this book, but I just, I don't know. I looked at like a picture of the CGI squirrel, and it just, I don't know.
It would have been better if it was fully animated.
It feels like animated.
I want to cheerlead. I want to cheerlead you into giving this a thumbs down because I think that you're tempted to give it a thumbs up on the merits of it being a Kate DiCamillo book, but I want you to put your foot down and say Kate DiCamillo has a book that I don't like.
No, because if I gave Strawberry Girl a thumbs up, I would give this one a thumbs up.
I can already hear my mom's.
No. I'm not saying because that was a bad book. I'm just saying like there were things I disliked about that book, but overall I think it is a good book. And I feel the same way about this. And I feel like I also don't feel like I read this very well to justify a thumbs down. It is my least favorite Kate DiCamillo book. But I still think it's fun and good. I'm going to give it a thumbs up, and you can't bully me into otherwise.
I said cheerlead.
I
did not say bully.
Otherwise.
I guess cheerleaders can be bullies at times.
What are you going to give?
I am thumbs up, not as enthusiastic as, for instance, Tale of Despero, which I really liked.
And I think I was also just mad as I was reading this because, I still feel like Because of Winn-Dixie is the best book that I've read by Kate DiCamillo. I think it's her best work. And it just got the honor. It didn't win. It won many other awards.
Did we look and see what won instead of Because of Winn-Dixie?
I have looked a few times, but I always forget. So it's just it's sad to me that I think that book was so much better, but this is a book that won. I don't know. But that's a silly, I don't know.
I think, any interaction that you have with the book, you're bringing your baggage from just who you are with it. Because of... It was A Year Down Yonder by Richard Peck. I've read a Richard Peck book, and I don't remember it impressing me. So we're going to say that Because of Winn-Dixie was robbed, even though I've not read Because of Winn-Dixie.
Yeah. Maybe the next time we do 2000s, we'll read that one so that we can revisit this conversation.
We'll read Because of Winn-Dixie?
No. A Year Down Yonder. When we get back to the 2000s, that's a book we can choose, which will be a while.
Yeah, so all of our 2000s books are going to be Kate DiCamillo themed, even if they're not about Kate DiCamillo. So any last thoughts about this here book?
No, I was telling Michael, this is one I think we could have read with our son. He's 4, and we've just started reading chapter books with him at night, and he's getting really into it. And we've mostly just done Magic Treehouse books, and he's really enjoying those. But
he liked Captain Underpants.
He did like Captain Underpants, and he liked those dumb. I shouldn't say that's mean of me to say. Those dog, cat, man, whatever they are.
The author of Captain Underpants wrote some graphic novels.
Yes.
That Jarvis likes, our son, and Rebecca clearly does not. Thumbs down on the
I just don't
graphic novels.
understand them. But I think that this book, Flora and Ulysses, it would have been fun to read with him. I think he could have trekked with it, and I think it would have made me enjoy it more reading it with him.
Do you think an element of you being less enthusiastic about it, like, do you think this is geared toward younger kids than the other books?
I don't know, because it deals with some pretty mature themes.
Yeah, and I guess the protagonist is like, what's she supposed to be, like 10 or something?
She's 11. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess. I guess thinking about it, I wouldn't say that this is for particularly younger readers than Desperate.
But I could see a really young reader like thinking this superhero squirrel that could type was cool. I don't know. That was something I forgot to say. The poem that Ulysses writes at the end, I think, is so sweet.
I do like the poems that Ulysses writes. They're kind of silly.
But the one at the very end was very, very sweet.
It is.
It was a great way to end. Why don't you end this episode with that?
We'll end this episode with that, and then we'll talk about our next book. So this is Epilogue, Squirrel Poetry. Words for Flora. Nothing would be easier without you, because you are everything, all of it. Sprinkles, quarks, giant donuts, eggs sunny side up. You are the ever-expanding universe to me.
I thought that was so sweet.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of those, too, are references to the book.
Yes.
Like, he has donuts at one point with sprinkles.
Yeah.
And
See, how can I give a book that ends in that way a thumbs down? I can't. And I won't.
I have an anxiety. Anxiety is too strong of a word. I have a misgiving that we're being too forgiving on this podcast.
Because it's Kate DiCamillo?
No, I just mean in general. I think there are books that in retrospect we don't actually regard very highly, but that we give them thumbs up.
I think we've become more confident in giving things
softies.
Thumbs down.
But we're not here.
Okay, irregardless.
Our next book is going to be from the 2020s. There's only a few 2020 books to choose from, but we are choosing one of them, and it's actually the most recent Newbery Award winner as of this recording. So this is the 2023 Newbery Medal recipient, Free Water, which is by Amina Lukman Dawson. I don't know anything about this book, except that it is historical fiction. So we'll see how it is.
Thanks for listening.
Talk to you later.